Fuck GTO. GTO's got to go. Say no to GTO, kids. But why am I saying that? That is the question, isn't it, guys? Why am I hammering hard on the fuck GTO train? First of all, it's hilarious. Second of all, it's really fucking true. And I actually underestimated how difficult it would be to get across the message of fuck GTO to some people, and I really do believe that it's due to some heavy misinformation / I'm going to use the word propaganda because it's a funny word to use there. And people are indoctrinated, that was tricky, into believing a way of thinking as superior when in fact it's, in my opinion, extremely inferior. And the thing is about this topic of whether you should be playing exploitative versus playing GTO, as many topics are, it's extremely nuanced and there's a lot of balance. So I'm going to clarify my point, and I'm going to clarify what I believe to be the truth, and I'm going to clarify what I think the best way to be thinking about this topic is. Even if you don't want to take my word for it, which I understand there are lots of different opinions, I'm going to give you the information and the structure of thought that I would use to approach a topic like this, and let you make your own mind up. Because I really do feel like if one implements good enough rational thought, they will come to the same conclusion as I have. But I'll lay it out there for you. So, what is GTO, just quickly? It's called Game Theory Optimal. It is essentially the optimized play strategy for any given game. There will be many forms of GTO, simplified as in if you were to play rock, paper, scissors, you'd want to throw rock, paper, and scissors 33% each time, each one of them, but also it needs to be randomized. And the reason it needs to be randomized between the three is because then you're 100% unexploitable. And in poker, when it comes to GTO, poker's such a fucking complicated game. It's so complicated. You have you have so many different amounts of bet sizes that even the best artificial intelligence we have has got nowhere near Game Theory Optimal. But we are slowly getting closer and closer towards the answers. And the high stakes community, they're working on something called PO Solver and a few other pieces of software where they'll put in a hand and they'll say, hey, PO Solver, what's the Game Theory Optimal way to play this? And PO Solver will be like, oh, well, if you do this and do this 60% of the time, do this 34% of the time, and with this hand and this hand and this hand, you do that, and that hand, you do about the turn, and then it'll go off on one. PO Solver is fucking crazy. Some of the lines it comes up with is so genius. So I want to first give the disclaimer. I want to say, hey, close this for a second. GTO has its place. GTO is extremely powerful as a way of playing, and GTO, at some point, if you want to be able to beat the higher stakes, you need to know something about it. Depends on the person how much they need to know. Like, there are some players like myself and Mustafa Khan and other people out there that really just annihilated the high stakes without needing to know all of this stuff. We figured out a bunch of it by ourselves. We saw how other people played. We picked up information on how they played, but then went the level above that to exploit them because the people doing it were still human and were still making mistakes, and they weren't actually Game Theory Optimal, so they were still technically exploitable. But then there are some people that maybe don't have the natural insight and to be able to do that, and so might need to have a completely GTO way of playing, or like a partially like separate half and half GTO / exploit, and so they'll play GTO against the best players and exploit against the worst players, anywhere like that. So when I say fuck GTO, guys, I'm not underestimating how good GTO is as a strategy when implemented in certain situations. In poker, GTO involves finding different parts of your ranges and trying to find the highest EV lines, routes, ways to play the hand possible in terms of having the best formulated strategy against your opponent. But at the same time, it wants to balance that strategy so your opponents can't then exploit it. So the balance part of that means that you're giving up some of the EV of each specific hand that you'd be playing. Let's say you want to be betting flop, betting turn, shoving river with aces. Well, in GTO, with GTO implemented, sometimes you're going to have to check aces, because then you can check other hands, and that'll make the other hands just as profitable and unexploitable to check. So people can't just randomly bluff you off the flop if you're only betting your good hands. So that's all fine and dandy. It's all fine and dandy when you reach the high stakes. Really, there are so many different ways to play, so many different ways to do things, and I would recommend most people out there, if you're playing the super high rollers, I'm sure no one here is going to be playing the super high rollers and be like, oh my god, I never thought of that. But just like, if you ever did get there, it's going to be a thing. So, you know, but here's where the crux of the issue comes in, and here's why fuck GTO is such, in my opinion, important, memorable sentence for people to have going round and round in their head. And the reason for that is, well, I'll separate this into two ways. First of all, strategy-wise, if you're playing a game theory optimal strategy, yes, you can deviate from that and you can play exploitatively sometimes, and that's what a lot of the game theory players do. But they're still, in the majority of cases, playing a balanced strategy. And let me give you an extreme example of why that is pretty ridiculous. Let's say you're playing someone who, you know, just has never raised a river in their life. In their life. They may have done it like once as a misclick. You know, that kind of player. We all know one if we've been to Vegas. There are a few floating around the EPTs. Shout out to Paul Newey, love you, dude. And, like, that's their style. It can work. It can do really, really well. But on the other hand, it does mean that a good exploitative player will make some very big folds against them if they do happen to raise the river. And if you are playing against those kinds of people, you can genuinely get to the point where you'll bet the river with value hands, with the top best hand you could have in a certain situation. They'll raise, and you should fold. You should definitely fold. And I can actually think of a very specific hand example. If you guys want to look up like Doug Polk versus Paul Newey, where Doug overbets the river with a boat, and then Paul Newey raises with a bigger boat. That is just nowhere near a call. Nowhere near a call for Doug, but he's got a boat. It's probably the best hand, or one of the best hands he's going to have in that situation, and that's a very game theory way of approaching a situation. I'm near the top of my range, I have to call. Guys, if you start having that thought, I'm near the top of my range, I'm near the bottom of my range, I have to do this, stop it. It's just such a waste of time, unless you're playing the same people who are very, very good at poker day in, day out. And by very good, I mean like very, very good. I don't mean just like, oh, they crush 50 and L good. I mean like really fucking good. It's just not a good way of thinking. And the reason for that is that they are not going to know how you're adjusting and which hands you're folding, because they're not going to see your cards when you fold. They're not going to be like, oh, now that looks like he folded the top of his range, so now I'm going to be bluffing that more. And the way that you can approach these situations is just playing your hand. Using some intuition, being like, oh, okay, he's seen me do this a lot. Maybe he's going to try and exploit me like that, and I can re-exploit him like that. But just playing your hands, playing your perceived range, so what you think that they think your range will be, which is the tricky bit, and playing what their range will be. But if you're on the micro stakes, you don't even need to think about the perceived range bit. You just need to think about what kind of hands they might have, because it just could be fucking anything if you're playing 2-0, and then be like, oh, I've got a big hand. Oh, I've got a set. I'll bet huge because people are really stationing and they could have top pair, and I'll try and get value from top pair and stack top pair. Oh, okay, I want to bluff him, and the turn's been a barrel card. I'll barrel big because I think he's going to fold 90% of his range, but I'll barrel big with basically my whole range. So they are just like two examples of so many different spots that come up. The game theory players are just going to be like setting their money on fire. It's really not a smart way of approaching the game. And here's the second thing. Here's a really big thing, and what may be the most important issue surrounding this. When you learn a balanced strategy, you are quashing your creativity. You are quashing the ability to think in an exploitative, creative, intelligent, lateral manner. When you're thinking exploitatively, you're thinking, oh, what can I do here? Maybe I can, like, with this hand specifically, I can lead a 6th pot on the turn because then he might bluff raise and then I might do this. And then, oh, if I have this hand, then I might check call the flop and then, oh, I can lead the turn. That'd be super smart. And you come up with loads and loads of different ways to play hands. And not only can that be higher EV, and yeah, it can be lower EV if you do bad. But the thing is, at the beginning of your poker career, you're not just trying to build a bankroll straight away. The main thing you should be doing is getting good at the game you are playing for the longevity. So it's that long-term versus short-term EV. You want to be making money in the long term. You don't want to be the guy that's sitting there but then, oh, I want to play $1 sit and goes because it's higher EV than playing cash games or like whatever. You want to be the person that's saying, I'm going to find the toughest 2NL tables I can, play as many hands as I can, and try and think so clearly and so crisply that my thought process becomes second nature. That this is an autopilot response where I can work through their range, work through my perceived range. And that's the point that good players get to. They know what the other person's range is just like that. And game theory players do that as well. But the thing is, I don't know any game theory players that didn't start exploitatively. Because game theory didn't exist. Like, people didn't speak about it. And if it did, it was in a very primitive sense. When people first started playing, even the GTO bots now, they all started, and maybe there were exceptions, but I don't know of any, they all started playing in an exploitative manner. So now it's just this generation of new poker players that have been left to be like, oh, now I need to start playing this way, and I didn't get the background of being able to think like this. If you think of it like if you go to university and you study maths, you have a mathematical background for life. The rest of your life. That's really cool. You get a really good logical way of thinking. You can do numbers really quick, and it's the same thing here. If you have an exploitative way of thinking to begin with, then you're going to be the person that can go out there and exploit the recreational players. And do it really well as well, instead of just not having too much practice of it. It's a different way of thinking. You can think creatively, you can think intelligently, and then maybe one day you can go off and learn GTO and you can decide how much of your game you want to be GTO and how much you want to be exploit, depending on different circumstances. And hey, guys, this isn't a blanket rule. This isn't for everyone. There's been one person I was coaching for a while that he sucked so bad at the exploitative style that I said, hey, dude, maybe you should learn GTO as a last resort. And that's what the GTO, in my opinion, should be. It's like, hey, GTO, if you can't really play poker that well. It's kind of a facetious joke, but you feel me? Like, the vast majority of people, hey, if you're gonna be a poker genius, test out whether you're a poker genius first. Don't test out whether you can play a balanced strategy and make your 3 BB per 100 or whatever. Test out whether you can be the person that knows always to bluff in this spot with this size, never to bluff in that spot with that size. Value bet 3x pot here, bluff 3x pot here, in this spot, in this spot, in this spot, because there is something so artistic about poker, because every single hand is different. You have to be thinking creatively on the spot, on the ball all the time. You have to be thinking, oh, if I do this and he's going to feel like this, and if I do this it'll look like a bluff to that person, but that person I think it'll look like a value bet to, so I have to really adjust. And if you don't have any information on the person, maybe okay, I know that generally 2NL players play like this, so mostly, if I bet like this, 2NL players might see it as a bluff. Mostly, if I play against 15L players and I bet like this, they're going to see it as a value bet. And that's something that exploited players, they understand very, very well, the best exploited players. You say, I remember I had a conversation with Greg Mercer once, WSW champion, and we're talking about overbetting. And I was like, yeah, I tend to overbet these spots as a bluff versus recreational players, only for value versus like bad to medium professionals, and then I balance it versus the high stakes pros. And Greg was like, yeah, me too, exactly the same as that. And we both come to the same conclusion that you can exploit people and who are recreational, you can exploit people who are like bad to medium / kind of good regs, and then you have to balance versus the people that are actually paying attention and know how to exploit you back just at the same level. But there are still some like really, really top players that I'll exploit super hard because I understand some of their tendencies, and I'm sure the same goes to them from me. But the cool thing about poker is that you get to try and be the person who's on the level above. You get to be the level above the person that you're playing against, and if you're capable of doing that, you're not just going to beat the micro stakes and the small stakes, you're going to annihilate them. You're going to absolutely rinse them for everything they're worth. And you want to be able to have that along with you for when you're playing the high stakes, or if you're playing the WSOP main 10k event, and like 80% of people are pretty trash at poker, with all due respect to them. It's all relative. I don't actually mean to shit on people's poker game, but like, it's known to be the softest 10k ever by far, and you want to be the person that can exploit every single different person differently and individually based on what you see in front of you, what they look like, what you see and how they play, and based on what kind of feeling you get from the person. And that's something also that's very worth noting. If you are the kind of intuitive person, not everything can be put into words. There'll be a lot of hands that I'll play. Like, I played in front of Ben, my friend, who I coached and from the micro stakes, and now he plays the high stakes. I used to play hands in front of him, and I'd be like, okay, check shove in here. And he'd be like, why? I'd be like, dunno, feels right. And then we'd go over it. We'd go over the combinations of what hands he can have and what we can have and what we think he's going to think we're going to have and things like that. And it would turn out to be really fucking good play. I mean, sometimes a bit pumped, but most of the time it was really fucking good because my autopilot was just on the ball. And that is something that you guys can get. And please do not let people tell you to be scared and just wave the white flag and like, you don't want to get in guessing games, which is like a common argument for not trying to play exploitatively. Yeah, you want to fucking play guessing games. Yeah, it's a guessing game, but it's a fucking estimate game. It's a game of guessing that you're hopefully better than other people at. Being a professional or a wannabe professional, or at least one day you're going to be a lot better than them. Because if you're not engaging in that guessing game, then you're shutting down from the ability to exploit them. And they're playing a guessing game themselves. Like, you play a 50-year-old, they're not, like, I don't mean to be ageist or anything, but like, I don't know any like super professional 50-year-olds apart from Talal. They're not going to know anything about GTO, you know? It's just not going to be part of their thought process. They're going to be like, I've got my hands and I want to play it like this. I think that guy's full of shit, right? Bet. You know, something like that. And you want to be the person that can exploit their guessing game, and to do that. And here's how I'd link it into like a powerful life thing as well. To really utilize and understand one's own power and one's own prestige, one has to go out into the world and make yourself vulnerable to the world. And not only make yourself vulnerable, you have to say, hey, I'm vulnerable to the world, I'm allowing myself to be open to the world, and I can handle it. And that is something really, really powerful to say. You don't want to be the person that's closed off to the world and walking around like this and not trusting anyone and not getting in any conversations or relationships. You want to be the person that's walking with your shoulders back saying, hey, yeah, I might get hurt if I get in this relationship. Yeah, if I go into this business, it might fail. But I'm allowing myself to potentially fail and for it to potentially go to shit because I'm putting myself out there to do something great. And that is, like, the analogy, it works. It transfers over to poker. If you're allowing yourself to engage in this exploitative guessing game, then, yeah, you're allowing yourself to be exploited. But if you're confident and competent, then you're going to come out on top in the long run. So that'll probably do it for me. It's a really... I wanted to add nuance to this topic because whenever I've mentioned it in short, yeah, there's a bunch of people that kind of just like... I've had so many messages from people being like, thank fuck somebody finally said fuck GTO. But at the same time, there have also been a lot of people who are like, oh, why does he think he can speak about GTO? I don't think, it doesn't make any sense. Does he not know what GTO is? So like, I want to show that I do have a balanced opinion. I do understand how good GTO can be, but when developing your mindset and when at the beginning of your poker career, it is extremely detrimental. It really, really is. And I don't want people to have the chance of a lifetime of becoming a professional poker player and liberating themselves economically, financially, and any other way that poker can liberate you, which is a hell of a lot of ways. I don't want to have that stripped away from people just because they've been learning some bad information out there. And one other thing to mention is that exploitative style is a lot harder to teach than a game theory balanced approach. It's a lot harder to teach. There's no way around it. I have taught it before very, very successfully, and I'm going to continue teaching it. And I do not believe there is any good content out there for micro stakes or small stakes players, maybe even up to mid stakes, especially in tournaments. I don't believe there's good enough content out there where people are learning, instead of just being like, I do this in this spot, this in this spot, this in this spot, where people are learning to question their own thought processes, to think, what is it that made me punt there? What is it inside me, my thought process, my mind, my emotions, that made me want to make this error or this error? What is it that I'm missing from my thought process that would be additive to it? And instead of just having like a billion different ideas thrown at you and trying to like jumble them together, instead of doing that, starting with a base layer, working your way up, adding and adding, and everyone's route is going to be different from here, and everyone's route is going to have to be driven and learned by themselves. But do not be scared, guys, to learn that. Do not be scared to take it upon yourself and be like, this is my style of poker. I'm going to use the fundamentals that I've been taught. I'm going to use these concepts that I've been taught. But I am going to find the way of poker that works best with my mind. Because some people's minds work best as a super aggro player. Some people's minds just can't handle that, can't handle the swings, and they have to play nitty. That's super okay. And there are lots of different variables apart from aggro and nitty that you could develop into your own specific, unique style. But you have to be the person that learns that, and you can't just go into an industrialized factory process of learning how to play poker like everyone else, because you can't do that. And if you do, you're going to eventually get to the top, and maybe you could be crushing GTO, maybe you could. But the exploitative way of thinking, it's going to be deviating from GTO, and instead of just having its own life and its own joie la vivre, you know, its own way of experiencing and thinking, to be able to exploit people maximally. Because I guarantee if you deviate from GTO, you're not going to be able to get to the same thought process and at the same speed and the same efficiency and the same effectiveness as if you just instantly know how to exploit them. Because that is what your subconscious can do if you play enough hands exploitatively. So, to sum up, guys, fuck GTO. Say no to GT fucking O. GTO has got to go. Until maybe in the future a bit, once we got really good at this exploit stuff and become professional poker players. So, whew, got that off my chest, guys. I hope you appreciate how passionate I am about this. It's been something I've been wanting to speak about for ages. Before I knew that I was going to make a site to teach this stuff. My site isn't just going to be to teach poker, by the way, guys, just in case anyone doesn't know. It's also going to be extending to lifestyle behind poker, emotions behind poker. There's going to be meditation, there's going to be yoga, there's going to be diet, there's going to be exercise, all specified to poker. And then we're going to also go outside of the poker realm. We're also going to be drawing loads and loads of people in from outside poker. It's going to be a big project, guys. I really can't wait to share it with you. I can't tell you too much about it yet, because everything's still getting written up and the contracts and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be super sick, guys. And thanks for listening if you got this far. And if you disagree, please let me know. But don't be that guy that just because you disagree, you get hateful and you get negative, because we don't like the negatrons here. It's just not a way of being that you want to be. Trust me on that. If you can trust me on anything. If you want to disagree, be like, hey Charlie, yeah, I totally see your point, but here is why I disagree. So be like, this fucking guy doesn't. Don't be a Timmy, you know. Don't be the guy that's just sitting there keyboard warrioring, and also maybe like approach the situation with humility. And I know most people don't need to hear this, but like there are a significant number of people who have no poker records. Like they'll maybe be playing like like 50-cent sit and goes, that will inside of them think that they have more substance behind their opinions than somebody who has played for an extraordinary long time, has had really good success. And I'm not saying you have to just trust someone's opinion just because they're super high up, but approach a situation with humility and approach the situation thinking, maybe I'm wrong, and be open to being wrong. But also, like, just don't take someone's word for it and think about it really, really hard. But as long as you don't have that instant defensiveness and be like, fuck this guy, then I would say you have a lot higher percentage chance of reaching the best conclusion for you to reach. So anyway, peace.